So my guest today is Dr. Michael Norton. Hello, Michael.
Hi, how are you?
By the way, would you prefer me to call you officially Dr. Michael or just Michael?
Definitely not. Michael
Okay.
or Mike for sure. Yeah.
I think getting this degree is such a big job. I always want to honor that. It's really amazing. But it's not just doctor. Actually, Michael Norton is a professor of business administration, not just professor, but actually Hal Briley Professor of Business Administration in Harvard Business School. He is also the author of the book, The Ritual Effect, and co-author of the book, Happy Money. Michael has researched human behavior, which is related to love and injustice, happiness and, time and money, happiness and grief, right? Interesting combinations, by the way, but we'll be talking about rituals today. Michael has so his TEDx talk about how to buy happiness, very curious, has been viewed by more than 4.5 million people. He has also been named by Wired magazine in 2012 as one of the 50 people who will change the world. He is a regular contributor to such media as the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Scientific American, and has been guest on TV shows, radio, podcasts, and now in Mindvalley Book Club. And I'm very happy about that. So, Michael, did I leave something out or did I mention the important things?
That was more than enough. Thank you. That was very generous.
Thank you. So we're going to talk about Michael's recent book, which just came out this year, The Ritual Effect. Did I say it correct? The Ritual Effect.
Yep.
Oh, I was reading the book for the past 1 week, and then suddenly I was wondering if I remembered the name. So we'll dive straight into that. First of all, I want to maybe start a little bit from a distance and ask how did you end up researching ritual? Because in your book you do mention that you were a ritual skeptic. How did it turn for you? Why did you go into that? Because I know you also researched happiness for a very long part of your career. Why exactly rituals?
I think a couple of things happen. I've always been interested in trying to find things that people can do in their everyday lives to kind of change the course of their day. Early on, it was to make themselves happier. So we did all this research that you mentioned on how to spend your money in order to be happier. And a lot of that it wasn't like, if you have $1 billion, how should you spend your money? The research is usually, if you had $5 today, what should you do with it to get the most happiness? So, and by the way, you should give it away, just so everybody knows. But leaving that aside, just these ideas of these little everyday things that people can do that can have a big impact on their emotional life. And so I
Mhm.
was studying that in the domain of happiness. And then the older I got, the more you realize that life isn't all just about happiness, that it's about all of these range of emotions that we have. And so I started thinking about the constellation of emotions that we have. Sadness, nobody wants to be sad, but times in your life when you've been sad, you have immense personal growth, for example. So I wouldn't root for sadness for you. And yet we know it's really important for developing our sense of self. And I was looking around at that and thinking about all these different emotions. And I started to realize that rituals are one of the things that we use very, very commonly to produce all sorts of different emotions in ourselves. We use them at weddings and at funerals. We use
Mhm.
them to psych ourselves up, and we use them to calm ourselves down. They're kind of this funny tool that humans discovered, where they're using them to get all these different emotions in life and cope with all these different emotions. And that was, for me, the entry point on what do they do, why do we use them, and can we give people advice on using them more, using them less, changing their everyday lives.
Mhm. So, tied to that question would be probably, so in your book, you do go very deeply into rituals and rituals as they relate to yourself, to your identity, also in relationships at work. Uh, and it's a very thorough research of rituals. What is your primary goal with that book? What would you like to see? Maybe it's a little bit grand question, but how would you like to see the world change as a result of it?
Yeah, I think that is ambitious. I think two things for me. One is just that many people say, if I say, do you have any rituals in your life? They say, no, I don't have any of those at all. Those are kind of like soft and fuzzy things that, happen, but they're not really for me.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is if we talk about rituals for a little while, people start to realize they do have them. You know, they have them with their kids, they have them with their romantic partner, they have them with their teams at work. And they're playing a really important role in our lives, actually, in our emotional lives. And so, number one is actually just helping people recognize that they're already a big part of our life and kind of owning them a little bit more. Like, this is my thing that we do, or this is how my family celebrates this holiday. And then the second one is really thinking about experimenting with rituals in different domains of life. So we look, any domain of life, you see some person has been using ritual in that domain of life. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not that you should use a ritual in every domain of life. Of course not. But are there places in life where you might use a tool like this to improve your happiness, improve your experience, improve your connection to other people?
Mm-hmm. So here I want to ask about the difference between three phenomena, but we'll probably stop on one a little bit more. The rituals, obviously, the habits, very interesting topic, but I also would like to ask about the routines or the things that are not neither habits nor rituals, but the things that you just do and you don't pay attention. What are the differences and are these differences actually very clear or are the boundaries blurring between them?
Can I ask you a very silly question that I like to ask people?
Yeah.
So the question is, and think for yourself if you're watching or listening as well. In the morning, when you're getting ready, do you brush your teeth first and then take a shower, or do you take a shower and then brush your teeth?
Can you guys, those who are here with us, can you actually write toothbrush or shower depending on what's first for you? It would be nice to see. Thank you for this question, by the way, because for the past few days that I've been taking showers, I've been thinking about that. About
Hmm.
the question. Okay, we have some answers coming in. Amazing. I take shower first. Shower first. Shower. Toothbrush. 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 Shower first. Teeth first. Well, I'll tell you. I'm one of those weirdos who takes the toothbrush in the shower.
Oh my gosh,
I know.
that's not okay at all.
I just like my shower so much
Yeah.
that I want to have another reason to stay there.
Oh, I like that idea. Yeah, but I mean, you can see even in what people are chatting in that it's
Yeah.
very commonly about 50-50.
Mm.
Half of people kind of a small percent do them at the same time like you, but about half do toothbrush first and half do showering first. And it's weirdly true all over the world. I mean, even in this audience, there's people from all over the world. There's no consensus on what to do first. So
Mm.
that was kind of that's just an observation. That's a thing that we do in the morning. But the question that's really to the heart of your question that you asked is, if I asked you to do it in the reverse order tomorrow, how would you feel? And the options are totally fine, I couldn't care less, or something about that would feel weird to me. I can't quite articulate why, but I don't want to do that. And what
So,
we can see what
yeah,
people say. Yeah.
again, I'd like to ask you guys to write if weird or fine, because I'm also curious about that. Um, I'll answer later, maybe. Um, okay, maybe it will take some. Maybe you guys need to take it to experiment tomorrow to understand. Absolutely fine to change. Okay. Well, in my case, I was thinking about that too, because sometimes I do brush my teeth first and sometimes I forget to brush my teeth. But that's usually is reminded in the middle of the day with my physical feeling.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but I generally don't really care.
So when we ask people, we do, of course, do this in research as well,
Yeah.
but again, roughly half of people say it's fine, I don't care. And roughly half say, I don't want to do that. I don't know why, but I don't want to change the order.
Mhm.
And if you think about kind of the difference between a routine and a ritual, routines and habits are the things that we need to get done. Every morning, I need to brush my teeth and shower. I've got to do it every morning. It's an important thing to do, but I couldn't care less what order I do them in. They're just things to check off on a box.
Mhm.
When you start to care about the order, the way many people do, they say, I really would rather brush my teeth first and then shower. And they say, I'd feel weird all day if I don't do it in that order. That's when you're starting to move kind of from a dry, boring routine, an emotionless routine, to something a little more emotional. Now, suddenly, when you do it in your order, if you do it the way you like, you feel ready to start the day. And if I
Mhm.
interrupt you or your kid comes in and messes it up, you actually feel off all day. And that's
Mhm.
not a ritual like people in robes with candles. Obviously, that's, further down the continuum. But it's the
Mhm.
idea that the same basic behaviors can either be completely devoid of emotion, literally just going through the motions,
Mhm.
or sometimes we imbue them with more than that, with emotion. And that's when they start to become more like rituals and less like routines.
Mhm. So here I want to slow down a little bit on the habits because I remember there was a quote. I do not know where exactly in my notes to look for it, but I'll try to recreate it. You are quoting actually someone else who says that I've optimized my life to the point that it's going to be very long and unpleasant. So why I'm asking this question is because nowadays, and I review a lot of books, and it's pretty much a common theme through everywhere. Optimization, trying to be efficient, but productivity, everything is trying to be optimized. And we do, maybe it's the society of high achievement and this constant rat race that we try to do everything as optimum as possible, and that means discipline, willpower, and really good habits. Why are rituals in that context? Why are they even important? I think I'll end my question here for now.
Yeah, it's funny because so I've done research on helping people to have better habits. So, for example, we've done research to help people be better about saving for retirement. And
Mhm.
so good habits are definitely good. I just want to be very clear. You should exercise, I should exercise more than I do. We should eat healthy. We should say things like that. So I'm not anti-habit. However, I started to think about if you had a life of perfect habits. So imagine starting today for the next 40 years, you had perfect habits every single day, all the time. At the end of the 40 years, you'd be probably very healthy, but would you say I had an interesting and rich life? Or
Mhm.
would you say, wow, I did the same exact thing every single day? And if you ask, like, do you want to be married to someone with perfect habits? People say, not really. If you say, do you want to go out to dinner? And they say, well, I already did my steps for the day. Some of these habits can really bind us into very specific, rigid behaviors. And I think one of the things that rituals do is help bounce us out of that sometimes it is good to celebrate. We have holidays every so often in every country and in every religion, almost sometimes to remind us, why don't we have a celebration at least one day a year? We have like Mother's Day and
Mhm.
Father's Day. It's a little reminder to us to do something special for your mom or your dad. They help us get out of the regular routine and remind us to celebrate or to gather or to do something different.
But in a way, couldn't those optimized habits, and I'm not saying good habits, I'm talking specifically about optimized habits, which uh, maybe intrinsically are supposed to be good, but can't they become, in a way, a ritual? Why I'm asking that is I've noticed among my more how to say active or the friends who are a little bit more oriented on their achieving their certain
Mhm.
goals that they have really hard times procrastinating, waiting, resting, anything which is not optimal and efficient. Uh, can this become a ritual to the point where you feel icky, like brush your teeth after your shower, and then you don't want to do that?
Yeah, I think when you start to be, if people are exercising and they start to have their favorite shoes and they have to tie their shoes in a certain way in order to exercise, then
Mhm.
again, we're moving away from it's just a thing to do. And now you've imbued it with more than that. How you do it, what you wear, who you do it with is mattering to you. That again starts to move it toward it has to be done in a certain way. I've got a lot of emotion around it. And so it can be a bit ritualistic. But for
Mhm.
many people, step goals are just that. They are step goals. We did when we used to study money and happiness, one of the things that Liz Dunn, my co-author, and I would talk about is that people want to earn more money. That makes sense because more is better. But the problem with money is one of the reasons we like to earn more of it is because we can count it very easily. So if I want to know if I'm better off than I was 5 years ago, money's great because I literally have a number and I can say I'm better than I was. Or if I want to know if I'm better than you, I can use
Mhm.
money and say, well, I have $1 more than you, so I'm better. So
Mhm.
money's useful in that way. And step goals are useful, 10,000 and I did 12,000 today. And calories, we can count them as well. The problem is that not everything in life that matters is really countable like that. And I do
Mhm.
think that sometimes people get kind of misdirected on the things that they can count well and focus on those as the way to improve your life. But for example, being a great partner, there's no scale. You know what I mean? There's no numbers that are counting up and down. So we think, well, I'll go do my step goals. I don't know how to be a great partner and I can't measure it. So why don't I go do step goals or a great dad or a great whatever? So a lot of the things that really, really matter aren't countable in that way. And I do worry that people default to countable because it feels good to be making progress like that. And there's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with making progress like that, again, but at the expense of what other activities are we
Mhm.
optimizing the activities that we've chosen?
So, how do you know when you don't have enough rituals in your life?
I think so. We've actually, it's funny, we've asked people, you can do the same survey and ask people across all these domains of your life, do
Mhm.
you do anything ritualistic? Is your morning routine more ritualistic or not? When you get to work, do you have a thing you do or not? When you leave work, at dinner with your kids, all of these domains of life, we can ask people, what do you do? And what's interesting is it's not that there are um, people who do all the rituals and people who do none. It isn't
Mhm.
really like there's a ritual type of person and a not ritual type of person. In fact, what we often see is people do one or two, but not in the other categories, which means there's kind of like we don't bring them always to bear. People bring them in when they need them for some reason or another. And it
Mhm.
varies widely from person to person which domains they feel like I should really have something like this in place.
So, where do we have most of rituals? Probably culture and family, I guess. That's my
You know,
guess, but you
you
are
know
the
what?
one who researches that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because when I started studying rituals, I was thinking of studying we call them legacy rituals, like the kind that are either from our faith or from our culture or handed down from our families. And those are, just to be clear, incredibly important and they play enormously important roles in our lives. I just want to say full stop. Those are fantastic and they really are important for us. However, what we started to see in the research was that people were very often, they did those, but then they very often freelanced a bit and made up their own.
Mhm.
And what that means is, and that was actually, I think, good news, because imagine that the only way a ritual could do anything for you is if it was at least 1,000 years old. Before that, they work, and after that, they don't work. Well, then they would still be fascinating and interesting, but they wouldn't be something that we can play with in our everyday lives. And what
Mhm.
we wanted to show really is that those kind are very, very important, but we can
Mhm.
also make up our own sometimes with our partners, with our kids, with our teams at work. And those can have emotional resonance as well. And that means it opens them up in a sense as something to experiment with, as opposed to just something that is handed down that must be followed exactly.
Mhm. So, that reminded me of that uh, interesting research that well, actually, you referred to a few different researchers there, but the idea that we come up with rituals when we don't have explanation to or control over the situation. So, is it a strength or a weakness? And why I'm asking that, if we take religion, for example, a lot of religion maybe grew around the fear of of eternity and death and what's after that, and all those rituals happened, and we do often think that religion has too much dogma, which is also in essence a ritual, right? So, is that good to explain things, not to explain things, but to take control of uncontrollable with a ritual?
I think one of the key things about rituals is that in a world, also the older you get, the more you realize you don't really have control over anything. It just starts to dawn on you over time. And so I do think there is this sense of, at least if we do these orderly, controlled actions, we can feel that we have a little bit of a sense of control. One of my favorite pieces of research ever. It's not mine, so I can just say it's amazing. It's this guy, B.F. Skinner, who founded behaviorism, which was literally just the only thing we should study is how people behave, not what's going on in their heads. But he did, and he worked with animals like pigeons and rats and stuff. I promise this has a point. And he did this one thing with pigeons where he usually did things like if you peck 3 times, you get a reward. And so you see how quickly pigeons can learn to peck 3 times as opposed to another round. And in this one, what he did was he just had food. He had a big thing in front of the pigeons with levers and stuff that they could peck at, but he just delivered the food randomly. at random intervals. And so what pigeons should do is just sit there and wait. And it's not what they do. What they do is they develop little rituals. So one pigeon will be like, I got to tap that 3 times and then push that lever and then it'll come. And they'll
Mhm.
start to do that religiously with a lowercase r. But another pigeon will have a completely different one. And so in the face of randomness, even pigeons start to develop these repeated behaviors to try to feel a sense of control. And if pigeons are up to it, it's likely or possible that we are up to it as well. And we do, I think, very similar things. In the face of real uncertainty, we will often come up with a ritual, either for ourselves or collectively, to help us feel a little bit more of a sense of control.
So superstition in a way is a ritual because like I have some rituals which I'm absolutely aware that they're superstition. My mom taught me if you have to like you're leaving on a trip, it's actually a Russian ritual. You have to sit down for a while. I follow it because I think it also the idea behind this, I suspect, and it's my interpretation, is to just slow down and not rush. But there are sillier rituals, you know, like spitting
Yeah.
over the left shoulder and whatnot. Um, are these rituals actually good or bad? Should we optimize ourselves and stop being stupid?
Yeah. I mean, yours, the one you raise is interesting because it's also a connection to your mother as
Yeah,
something that mattered to her. And so when you do it, even if she's not there, a little bit
yeah.
she is present with you. And rituals can do that for us for sure. However, many of them are just ridiculous, just to be clear. We did this is if you ask people if something happens and they want to knock on wood,
Yeah.
that's very common. And so if I ask people to knock on wood, what happens is about half of people knock twice and half knock 3 times.
Uh-huh.
And it's not by culture. It's not like, Germans do this. It's not like that. It's a little bit random. And so the question is what's going on? Why would some people be 2 and some people be 3? And we don't know. It's just that for some reason you're a 2 person and other people are a 3 person. In other cultures, you touch wood, you don't knock on wood, for
Yeah.
example. So we have these practices that become superstitions, but they're interestingly, it's not the same for everyone or everywhere. It's
Mhm.
the ones that you've come to believe are the important ones, are the ones that you enact. And it's very funny to do it in an audience because if you are a person who knocks 3 times, if you see someone who only knocks twice, you're very upset. you you really want them to do the third one. It's worse to knock twice than not to do anything at all. So we do, I think, importantly care about these superstitions in a way that has a lot of emotion and meaning, when technically all we're doing is just knocking. We
Yeah.
knock all the time and there's no meaning in it. We're just trying to get the door open. But
Yeah.
sometimes we take knocking and turn it into this. I mean, if you think about what we're trying to do, we're trying to get the universe to treat us favorably by knocking on wood. So I've always found that very interesting. But I do think superstition often is to ward off something bad, and many rituals actually are to cause something good. So they
Hmm.
have these different functions in our life to think about what goal are we trying to accomplish, and then we'll turn to different types of rituals to get that goal accomplished.
Hmm. So coming back to this I don't know, dilemma between habits and and rituals. I have a feeling that rituals and habits are a little bit at odds, and is that so, or is it just my interpretation of that? Because where habit is rational, ritual is not always rational.
I think so. One message is not if you go out and add 20 rituals to your life tomorrow, you'll be a happy person. That's not I wish that were true, but that's not the case. But a lot of rituals don't actually require more time. In fact, it's the same action. You're just
Mhm.
imbuing them with more. So I mean, toothbrush and showering is silly on purpose. So I don't mean to overuse that example, but everyone is brushing their teeth and showering.
Mhm.
It's just for some people, they like to do it in a certain order and it gives them a particular emotion that they're looking for. But they didn't need to add a 10-minute thing before they brush their teeth in
Mhm.
order to produce an emotion out of it. So there is a sense in which the things we're already doing, which are very mundane, can become imbued with more meaning when we kind of start to ritualize them. Like there was this couple, we did research on rituals in couples, romantic couples, and there was this couple and partners have the most adorable things that they do that they tell us about. But this one couple said, every time before we eat, we clink our silverware together. So that was their little thing that they do.
Mhm,
And it's very touching and it's very endearing. But what they're doing, I mean, it's just a fork.
mhm,
They're just taking a fork, which is a thing that you use to pick things up, and turning it into something that means something about their relationship. And so we can actually, by doing not like rituals, like an hour long kind of thing with candles and stuff, I mean the kind that are actually quite small and they
mhm,
don't take away from habits necessarily. They just add emotional complexity to them in a way that I think is good for us overall.
mhm. So would it be wise to try to ritualize some of your healthy habits or good habits? And
You know,
is there a way to do that?
I do think that it's very domain specific, for example. So with something like performance anxiety,
Mhm.
many people who have performance anxiety will do rituals before they have to perform, whether it's giving a speech or leading a meeting or acting or singing. People will go into the bathroom. Many people go into the bathroom and talk to themselves in the mirror for a little while, and then they come out and do the thing. But for people who don't have performance anxiety, they don't do rituals as much because they don't need them because they're not feeling anything about the meeting. And so it isn't the case necessarily that everyone would benefit from doing a pre-performance ritual. It's when you have a particular need, that can be a place to experiment with adding a ritual, not add them in every domain of life. So even with something like self-control, we all struggle a bit with self-control, but some people struggle more than
Mhm.
others. And so you can think about where you are on that spectrum and how you might change or not change because it's not something that would be helpful.
Hmm. So, one more question about the individual rituals. If you have a ritual, like I don't care if I brush my teeth in the shower before or after, but I do have a ritual, which is actually morning ritual, and it starts in the shower. If you feel that your ritual maybe is a little too long, is there a way, or a little too complicated? Because you write about that also, that in some sports or sometimes the rituals become too complicated. Sometimes they become obsessive behaviors.
Yeah.
Is there a way to simplify these things? Is it wise to do that? And how do you not lose the essence of your ritual if you feel that it's burdening your life?
Yeah, it's such an important question because the message of our research is not that more rituals are good. The message is that rituals create emotions in us. So even with your morning ritual, again, if you do it the way you wanted to, you feel great. But if you
Yeah.
can't do it the way you want, you feel worse. You probably feel worse than if you didn't have any ritual at all. So they're
Sure.
not necessarily just if you do them, good things happen. What we know is if you do them, emotions happen, and they can be positive or negative. And
Hmm.
this can happen with doing them too much as well. And I'm glad you brought it up. So something like a compulsion or obsessive compulsive disorder is a case where people have lost the link between why they were doing the ritual and doing the actual thing itself. So often when we do rituals, it's in the service of something else. Like I'm going to the bathroom and talking to myself in order to then go on stage. And what can
Hmm.
happen with obsessive compulsive disorder is we lose the link of in order to, and the
Hmm.
ritual itself becomes what we're doing. That becomes rewarding in and of itself. And then
Hmm.
we can get stuck in a loop that is actually very bad for our well-being. We don't know exactly, if it takes this long, that's when it's bad, and if it's this long, it's fine because it varies from person to person. But of course, there are cases where the ritual, as you said, it becomes too complex or you have to repeat it too many times. And then as soon as it starts to interfere with your life, that's when we might say, maybe you should think about pulling it back.
Hmm. So I see there's a question in the Q&A. And by the way, if you guys want to ask questions, do leave them in Q&A. I will come to that question in a moment. I want to actually ask about rituals and relations because you did mention that. And I just wanted to finish up the other topic a little bit. How important are rituals in our relations with other people?
Excuse me. When we ask people in romantic relationships,
Mhm.
we don't say, do you have a ritual? Because people are like, no, we don't have candles and robes and stuff. But what we ask people is things like, do you and your partner have something that you is special to you that
Mhm.
you make sure to do every so often regularly. It could be every night, it could be once a week, once a month, whatever it might be. And it's important that other couples don't do.
Mhm.
And about 2/3 to 3/4 of couples say, yes, we have something like that. And those are having a relationship ritual is very predictive of relationship satisfaction.
Mhm.
So if you think about your current relationship right now and think about if you and your partner have you develop your own language, your little kind of nicknames is a little bit of a ritual that you have. How people say goodnight to each other. It's like we kiss 3 times, not 2 times. We have these little things that we do with our partners, and they are a signal, not only that we're satisfied with our relationship, but that we feel that we're both committed to our
Mhm.
relationship. And that really is quite important because when you're in a relationship, it can feel, every day, technically, you're both deciding to still be together. So at
Mhm.
any point, anybody's allowed to leave. Unfortunately, that's the way relationships work. And these
Mhm.
little rituals like this clinking the silverware, if you think about what it's doing, it's saying, we've done this before every meal for 10 years
Mhm.
consistently. He's never missed it. I've never missed it. Are we committed to this relationship? Well, that's pretty good evidence that we
Mhm.
are. Is it actually evidence? Not necessarily, but the
Mhm.
idea that we've been doing this forever, we're going to keep doing this forever. We see that that feeling is associated with, okay, we're actually committed to this relationship. And then that predicts your relationship satisfaction overall.
So would the toothbrush test work here as well? If you were to miss this ritual, and you feel weird, that means that it is an important ritual for you.
There's an episode of the TV show This Is Us where if you watch Miguel is explaining why his marriage fell apart. And he
Mhm.
tells this, it's very amazing story, and I'm going to butcher it, but he basically says, every morning for years, I brought my wife coffee in bed every single morning without fail. And he said, one day I just didn't feel like doing it.
Mhm.
And you can feel what that meant to him. And then he said, and the worst thing was she didn't even notice. So it's just coffee, right? All it is just a hot liquid in a mug. But for
Mhm.
them, it had been something that they made sure to do as a couple. He's taking care of her in that moment. And when the meaning starts to go away and it starts to become just a cup of coffee again, you can feel that the relationship itself, actually, it is a signal. It's not the only signal. Sure, they had other problems than coffee, but these are kind of signals of the health of your relationship.
Mhm. So, since I'm a single woman, I'm going to shift gears and talk about business. No, I'm somewhat joking, actually. I believe that there are rituals also with parents and children, I'm
Oh, so
sure.
many, so many.
Yeah. But jokes aside, I did want to talk a little bit about work environment. Uh, it just feels kind of curious for me. Uh, and you talk about the team building rituals in your book, and how they can be a blessing, and also how can they be this apple of discord or the cause
Yeah.
of unpleasant
Yeah.
emotions. So and sometimes we feel maybe it's Estonian that, oh, here you come again with all your requests to do weird stuff. Like, can I just do my work? Can you
Yeah.
leave me alone? How important it is to actually have work rituals and rituals with your colleagues.
Yeah, it's funny because if you ask employees, what is their least favorite kind of manager? One of the things they say is like somebody who every weekend watches some TED talk or listens to some podcast and then comes in on Monday and says, now we have to do everything completely differently because I heard this thing. And then the following Monday they do it again and they do it again. And employees start to say, can you just leave us alone? We don't want to do all these silly things that you're doing. And the other place where it happens is with things like corporate retreats, where the management announces that all of us have to go to this 2-day thing, 2-day offsite, and we're going to do stuff like trust falls and stuff like that. And again, employees are like, I'd rather spend the weekend with my family or my friends or whatever. So it can lead to resentment,
Yeah.
which means that rituals, it's not that they're always great at work, is I guess my first point. But what
Mhm.
in our research, what we find is actually that the kind that often resonate with employees are the ones they come up with themselves, not the ones that are
Mhm.
mandated by corporate. So like we'll ask in
Mhm.
the same way we ask couples, is there anything that the two of you do that's special that you make sure to do regularly? We ask the same question to teams at work, actually. Is there anything your team does that's special and unique to you that other teams don't do that you make sure to do regularly? And many teams say no. And lots of teams say, yeah, we actually do have something like that. Like one team, it's very subtle, but it's important, I think, to get a sense of the types that people tell us. They said there's 5 of us in the team, and every week, each of us takes a day, and we get lunch for everyone else on the team. And then the next day, somebody else does it. And the next day, somebody else does it. And they've been doing it for years. It's just lunch. Everybody's going to eat lunch at work. But what this team is doing is one day of the week, I take care of everyone on the team. And the other 4 days of the week, the team takes care of me. It's all it is a sandwich, but they've changed it into this thing. And they say, and other teams don't do that. Other teams just eat their lunch by themselves. And so it isn't these like elaborate rituals that we think about with corporate retreats. It's often these ones that employees in teams or in dyads come up with themselves. And we see there that actually, not only do people see those as meaningful, but it translates a bit into seeing their work itself as meaningful. If you're somebody who's on a team that has these little adorable practices, it's correlated with seeing the actual work you do after lunch as more meaningful as well.
So actually, let me just check the question that was here so that I don't leave it. Masha is asking, there might be negative rituals as well. I'm wondering, what do you recommend to evaluate and then reframe our rituals in order to change the life, let's say in relationships area? That's a question from Masha.
In relationships, here's one sad thing about the relationships research is that, so if we get both members of a couple and we interview them separately and ask them, do they have anything like this, any ritual that's special to them? The majority of couples, both people say, yes, we do. And they agree on what it is. So both people say we clink our silverware together. Then there's a small percent of couples who say we don't have anything like that, but they agree they don't have anything like that. But then there's this middle group where if we ask one member of the couple, do you have anything you do that's like this? And they say, oh my God, we have this amazing silverware clinking thing. We've been doing it for 10 years. It's really important. The other person sometimes says, no, we don't have anything like that. And those couples are no happier than couples that don't have any at all. In other words, you have to have it jointly held and jointly created in order to get the benefits from this kind of having these rituals. And the reason I say that in answer to the question is you can determine whether your rituals are shared or not, because there's things that we might be doing that we feel are indicative of various things that our partner is completely missing entirely, or it's not important to them. And so there is a sense of checking with each other or with your team at work or any team that you're on. Is this something that we all agree consensually is important for us and something that we make sure to do? And that seems to be very important for these benefits, to see these benefits associated with these rituals.
So you think it's okay to discuss that openly? Like, hey, is this our ritual or is it a meaningless action for you?
What happens is what happens if you hear me talking about, doesn't have to be me, if you hear someone talking about relationship rituals, you automatically start thinking if you have any. You might even think about your previous relationships, like, well, did I have any with that guy that I hated? Or what about that guy that I really like, whatever it might be. And then that can prompt couples to kind of reflect together, do we have things like this or not? And sometimes they do, but most often they both agree it's a yes. But I think it's actually quite important to think, if something is very, very important and meaningful to me and you're missing it, it's probably something we should talk about. It's probably indicative of something not just about silverware, but about something else, about our communication. And so I think they can be little signals that are worth exploring because sometimes they have larger implications.
And when it comes to, if we extend that common ritual between different people at work, is it also something that that you could discuss with the team, or maybe the team doesn't care? Is that indicative you should try to find yourself a better team?
Yeah. One thing that is helpful actually is to, again, rather than say this is the ritual all the teams have to do, is to give teams a little time and space to come up with their own. And you can say things like, how do you start meetings? How do you end meetings? What do you do at lunch? What do you do after work as a team? Do you have any inside jokes as a team? All these things are kind of signals of the culture of the team. And it can actually be fun for teams to kind of surface some of those things that make them unique. And they can turn them into a little bit of a ritual that comes to be very important to them. An example, when the pandemic started and many people worked from home, uh, one thing that could happen is you could say, well, now that we're at home, we don't need any team rituals. Like we're
Yeah.
not in the same room, who cares? And that's not what we saw at all. What we saw is that teams came up with new rituals that were enabled by the technology.
Mhm.
So it's not that we say, nah, rituals, who needs them? It's that we say, we still need these rituals. How can we make them happen? And so one team, for example, at the beginning of every meeting, Zoom meeting, everyone clicked the emoji that reflected how they were feeling.
Mhm.
And so you get a screen of the kind of the average of how everyone's doing in a sense. And you also can see maybe that I should follow up with that person afterward. I can see how they're feeling. And they hadn't done anything like that before. It wasn't
Mhm.
that they used to do emotional check-ins at the beginning of meetings. They never had done them. So this actually created the opportunity to have a ritual for this team that then they kept doing. And again, what are they saying with the ritual? They're saying we really care about each other's emotional well-being. We're not just a team that gets tasks done. We're a team that looks out for each other.
So do these rituals erupt spontaneously, or are they still to a degree planned? Why I'm asking that is in your book you do write about a very interesting phenomenon, how groups sometimes start behaving in a synchronized way, as if they have rehearsed a behavior, and then nobody knows why they did so.
I will, when I give a talk live, I'll start out by putting up on the screen a series of steps, like clap
Mhm.
once, stomp once, clap 3 times, stomp 3 times, but a long list. And I ask everyone to stand up, and then I just put the screen up with the stuff on it. I don't say do anything, I just put it up. And people will start to, in the audience, someone will like clap once or stomp once or something like that. And then other people start doing it. And what happens very often is that they all start to sync up. So they really want to do the 3 claps at the same time with each other and the 3 stomps at the same time. And by the end, they're really in unison. The end is like shouting phrases. They're really in unison. They really feel connected to each other. And it's a completely made up ritual. And it's a room of strangers. So you get this insane thing with this group ritual where I completely made this one up, and yet it can have this property of making groups really feel like we're in this together. We did this together and now we're amazing. And the feeling in the room is we are awesome. That's how everybody feels at the end of these rituals. And I know that's true because we sometimes do things like think about a group that's doing one different from you. So they were
Mhm.
clapping and stomping too, but they were doing it in a different order.
Mhm.
Typically, we wouldn't care about that. But once we've done our ritual our way is the right way, obviously, because we're always correct. We actually dislike groups that do it differently, just on the basis of them doing the ritual differently. And again, so it's like rituals, it's true that rituals have positive benefits where they can bond us together with our teams. But again, it isn't only positive because they can also have this outcome of increasing distrust actually and dislike of other people. So they're prompting amazing positive emotions again, but they also can prompt some really negative emotions.
So why do you do that?
Why do I start that way?
Yeah. What, yeah, I'm just
I
curious.
it's 2 things. One is people who are skeptical of rituals
Yeah.
will get caught up in it like they just occurs to them that all of a sudden they're clapping and stomping, and it provokes emotion in people. It
Hmm.
can provoke, most people get this is awesome, we're doing this together. Some people refuse to do it and they feel very angry and irritated, like I'm not doing this, I don't know who this guy is, I'm not going to do this. But
Uh-huh.
that person as well is reacting against a ritual.
Hmm.
They're saying, I'm not going to do that. That's not who I am, which again shows the power of rituals in provoking emotion. So I use it really to show that these things, it's not always good, it's not always bad, but they nearly always provoke emotion in us. And that's, for me, the entry point into discussing rituals. I'm not discussing 2,000-year-old rituals most of the time in my research. I'm discussing the kind that are happening in our everyday lives. And I'm trying to show people viscerally that they do in fact change the way we think and feel. And if I can do it in that moment, I can have a more interesting conversation, I would say.
Mm. You know, I've noticed a similar phenomenon before I read your book, that when people sing together, let's say if it's a karaoke or whatever, they always clap at the end of singing, and I always wonder why. But now I think that's the explanation. They feel good about themselves.
Completely. And about each other, they feel like, yeah.
So there's one more question from Melissa. What about negative rituals, such as things, behaviors we do daily and around workplace that produce negative feelings? How can we change this?
I'm not exactly sure which type she means at work. I think there are people who many people, if we say, what do you do when you get to work? They have a little thing that they like to do. It's like, first I check my email, then I get coffee, then I do this, then I do this, and then I'm like ready to work.
Mhm.
And almost like brushing your teeth and showering before, if you do it the way you like to do it, it feels good. And if you can't do it that way, you feel uncomfortable. And there's actually research when you switch to open office floor plans,
Yeah.
which there's lots of good reasons to do that, but it turns out they're not necessarily that effective. But one of the reasons they're not is because now I don't have my space to do my little thing. If I have my own space, I can do my little morning thing that I want to do to get started. But if there's a lot of people around, I can't do it. And people will feel like off because they're used to doing their little ritual when they get to work. And now it's not as easy to do that. And so there is this sense that they, again, can be amazing and also can actually get in our way.
Mhm. So thank you, Melissa, for this question. I am actually going to have to start to finish. Actually, I was supposed to start to finish a few minutes ago, but I'll do the traditional things. First of all, I want to ask everybody who is online with us to leave a heart for my wonderful guest. And those who are going to be seeing it in recording, do leave a heart in the comments because it matters a lot. And it's my ritual. But I also want to encourage you to get the book. It's The Ritual Effect. I really enjoyed reading it. I haven't completely finished it, which I'm planning to do because it has triggered so many of the thoughts and reflections in me, and I love books like that. Since I read books professionally, what I love about the books that I pick for my interviews is that usually they make you think. I mean, there are of course the how-tos out there, but I strongly believe that we have so many answers about our lives inside us. So I really appreciate books which make you reflect and think about yourself and try to think, oh, so what do I do? How do I feel about that? And it's covering so many different topics, from your personal relationship to rituals, to rituals in relationships and at work. So it's really interesting to read, by the way, very interesting. So thank you. Thank you so much, Michael, for this wonderful interview, and of course for the book. Yeah, I think writing a book is also in a way a rite of passage. I know it's not your first one, but it is such a significant phenomenon in itself. So thank you so much for the book and for coming and chatting with our audience, and thank you everyone who joined me today and for your questions. And yeah, see you soon again. Actually,
Great.
not soon, July. Mindvalley University starts on Monday, and we are going to have our Mindvalley Book Club interviews on the venue of Mindvalley University. We'll tell you later about that. It's going to be spectacular. So I do not know. Maybe next year you'll come and join us, and then we'll get to do an interview in real person.
Sounds great.
Thank you, everyone,
Wonderful.
and see you soon
Thank you.
again.